Well, if you live in a major city, you probably see it for yourself that crime is on the rise, but mainstream media would have you believe otherwise, citing statistics that show a downward trend in crime rates. Dr. John Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center recently wrote a Wall Street Journal op-ed arguing that the decline is reported in crimes is a function of less reporting, not actually less crime. And he joins us live now to talk about it. John, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So why this discrepancy? The mainstream media can say whatever they want. We feel it. We see it.
Right. Well, maybe they don't understand, but there are two different measures of crime. The one that they rely on right now is the FBI Uniform Crime Report data. These are counting the number of crimes that are reported to police. But we've known for a long time that most crimes aren't reported to police. And so what's been set up about over the last 50 years is something called the National Crime Victimization Survey, which surveys about 240,000 people each year. And what that tries to get at is both the number of reported crimes and the number of unreported crimes. So it asks people specifically, have you been a victim of a crime? And then asks a long range of detailed questions to try to understand what type of crime that they were affected by and what the outcome was. And what you find is that over time, those have generally moved together, except for the last few years. And from 2020 on, there have been huge gaps in these two measures. So between 2021 and 2022, for example, you saw about a 2% drop in crime reported to police, according to the FBI data. But at the same time, the National Crime Victimization data showed a 42% increase in crime when you're looking at both reported and non-reported crime. And there's several reasons for this, but probably the simplest is just that we've had a collapse of law enforcement. If you look at arrests for reported crime in large cities over 1 million in population, during the 5 years from 2015 to 2029, 44% of violent crimes result in arrest. It started falling in 2022 and by 2020, and by 2022 it was down to 20%. That's more than a 50% drop. I've never seen such low numbers since we've collected this data, and that's just based on the FBI reported crime data. If you look at all cities, all crimes, both reported and non-reported, you find that only about 8% of all violent crimes result in arrest, and only about 1% of all property crimes result in arrest. And that's just arrest. That's not even whether they get charged.
Right.
And what happens is that if people don't think anything's going to happen to the criminals, they don't report the crimes to the police.
Exactly. I was literally going to say that. I mean, you know how many times I've heard from people say, call the police never showed up. I mean, especially in big cities, they've got so much going on. We've also seen, liberal DAs in big cities neglecting to prosecute the crimes. This is obviously discouraging law enforcement from doing their job. Is that part of the problem too? I mean, we saw in New York, the city council there passing a law, I think this was a couple of months ago, where police officers have to fill out paperwork for everything they do. So is that discouraging arrests as well?
Sure, and all those things matter a lot. If police officers think that they arrest somebody, but they're going to be immediately released, they have to think to themselves, what's the point of arresting the individual there if they're not going to be charged? In Chicago, every time a police officer stops and talks to somebody, they have to fill out 2 legal pages of forms that take between 45 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes to fill out. So if they go and talk to 4 people in the morning, their whole afternoon is taken up dealing with paperwork that's there. That's effectively removes police officers from the street. But you had the defunding of the police, which cut many police budgets. New York, you mentioned. In 2020 alone, they cut their budget for police by $1 billion a year. Chicago, in 2020 alone, cut the number of police officers by 400 positions. You have places like New Orleans, where the average response time to 911 calls is 3 hours.
Wow.
And you've had all sorts of retirements among police officers, losing people who have many years of experience. And it's created real problems because you've lost all that knowledge and ability. And even when they've begun to increase police budgets again, it's been very difficult for them to hire. People don't want to be police officers these days.
What do you think is happening with mainstream media? I mean, you literally just laid it all out for us. It just feels like journalism has become activism. I mean, without you even giving me the statistics, we see that crime is up. Neighborhoods that have never experienced crimes are having their cars broken into. I mean, I hear this. These are conversations that people are having. Like, can you believe this happened in our neighborhood?
Right. Well, I mean, if you look at the numbers, if 1% of property crimes result in an arrest, and even fewer are charged, and even fewer are prosecuted or convicted, it's essentially free crimes for these criminals to engage in. It's not surprising that you're going to see big increases that are going to be occurring in crime. But instead, what you see in the mainstream media is that headlines with like, crime is falling, but people don't seem to believe it, and arguing that people are just mistaken.
Right.
And the problem is, maybe the media just doesn't understand the numbers. Maybe it's what you're saying, that they're trying to, push, make everybody feel better about the country so that they'll vote for Democrats in the fall. I have no idea.
Yeah, basically,
but the bottom line is that they're misinforming people.
Don't believe your lying eyes, right? In your op-ed, you also make the case that this has led to Americans, loss of confidence in the legal system, right? That's why some of them are not even calling the police. So now they're arming themselves in record numbers. Talk about that, because it also depends on where you live. Because let's say in California, a lot of people are like, okay, I have a gun, but you're also limited where and how you can use it, because you can end up going to jail protecting yourself.
Right. Well, it varies a lot across states. What you find is that now we have about 22 million Americans that have concealed carry permits. But on top of that, we have so-called 29 constitutional carry states where it's not even necessary for people to go and have a permit to carry. We did a survey last year that found that about 15.6% of likely voters in the United States either carried all the time or most of the time. And that's a threefold increase from what Pew Research found in a survey that they did that was similar back in 2017. So there's been a big sea change, and it's exactly as you say. People see that law enforcement's collapsed. They see that if they call 911, it's very likely that the police aren't going to be able to respond. And it's kind of made it even more obvious to them that they have to be the first line of response that's there, and maybe the only line of response to criminals.
Yeah, and then you also, like I just mentioned, in California and places like New York, they're gun-free zones. And if something happens in the area, you end up going to jail. And it's like, it's very upside down. Dr. John Lott's Wall Street Journal op-ed is titled, "The Media Says Crime is Going Down. Don't Believe It." Check it out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.